What up, everybody? This is your boy Dedrian Colon from House of Rasslin, and this is my review for the May 20th episode of WWE Smackdown. Like, share, comment, subscribe, follow House of Rasslin on all social media platforms. Follow me, Dedrian180, on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Ooh boy, this was a very interesting Smackdown. Last week's episode of Smackdown, I really enjoyed. In my last review of Smackdown, you guys remember that I really enjoyed the Raquel Rodriguez Ronda Rousey match, and yeah, this week's episode of Smackdown, you can tell there was, I don't want to say awkwardness, but you could tell there was just a lot of questions in the air about the whole Sasha Banks and Naomi situation, which they addressed right before the Usos RK Bro match, which I'll get into later. But yeah, this was a very interesting show. I really don't know what else to say because I'm still processing what they, the verbiage that they used and everything as far as relaying the message in regards to Sasha Banks and Naomi, and it happening right before the Usos match. So just really, really unusual, like very unusual. I mean, it started off with a recap of last week. You had Roman and the Usos and Heyman come out. They're hyping up the main event match, which is RK Bro versus the Usos. The winner unifies the tag titles for both brands. So you have the heavyweight championships that are unified, and you have the tag team titles that are unified. So that's what it is. Roman, in the promo, he told the crowd that you're going to acknowledge not only me, but my cousins, the Usos. And then once you do that, you're going to be, in essence, acknowledging the Bloodline, which I thought was a pretty cool line. My thing with this, especially this part, and it's not the Bloodline's fault or even Paul Heyman's, because more than likely Heyman's writing it, but we're seeing it like too much. Like, Roman has been a heel since August of 2020, and we are in 2022, and if it wasn't for the fact that he changed his shirts and the Usos changed their shirts, you could not tell what episode of SmackDown it was, because it's the same thing. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy Roman. I got the Roman Reigns figure right there. I enjoy Roman, the Usos, and everything, but it's how WWE is presenting these guys that it's the same thing over and over again, and it's just like, okay, you have all these wrestlers, like, freshen it up, and just like, I think the main thing with WWE, especially with this segment, and you could say it kind of just trickled through some parts of the show and just other shows that WWE does, like, they've really neglected the art of stakes, where like, when they want to emphasize stakes, they do it, but for the most part they'll just whatever. And that's what takes away from the consistency that us as wrestling fans, and those that are WWE fans, like, kind of like wish they would do more of, like, have some consistency with the stakes. Like, everything should be be up for stakes, because let's face it, it's a quick business. You guys are on the flip side, the reality is, if people aren't producing, they cut them more in NXT. But, if people aren't clicking, you get someone else to take their spot. So it's like you have that, that, I don't want to say aura situation, but just that atmosphere already. Why not incorporate some of those characteristics and aspects into your storyline where everything has a stake? But I mean, this was an interesting promo. One line that really stuck out to me that was like, huh? Paul Heyman said the Usos are going to do something that Offensica didn't do, and that's unify the tag titles. And immediately I'm like, okay, when they were tag team champions, it was in the 80s. There were no unification. There weren't two world tag team titles, and there was like a depth of tag teams at the time, and the tag team matches that they booked had some logic to it, where it wasn't one team facing another team for 10,000 times for like 7-8 years. Like there was a variety. But yeah, this segment was pretty interesting. Then they go to a backstage segment with Sami Zayn. He has the Bloodline shirt. That was actually funny that he's celebrating. He's like, yeah, 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 yeah. And when I saw that, immediately when I saw that, the first thing that came to my mind, I'm like, yo, are they using Sami Zayn like the NWO used Disco Inferno in '99 when he was helping out the Wolfpack? Like, the similarities there. Don't get me wrong. Sami Zayn is a hell of a better wrestler than Disco Inferno. But what I'm trying to say is it's the irony of these storylines using someone as a trying to get in to a faction, or, you know, you help me, I help you. It's similar thing. It's really interesting and ironic that it's similar like that. So then we go to a match between Shinsuke Nakamura and Sami Zayn. I actually like this match. This was a really good match, in spite of the whole, you know, Sami Zayn trying to be in the Bloodline and everything. There was a cool spot where, as Nakamura's rocking to the ring, the Usos and Roman Reigns, the Bloodline, are walking past him, and they both stare each other down and give like these dirty looks. Like, yeah, if I wasn't going to the ring and if I wasn't going into the back, there'd definitely be an issue. I like that. That was cool. I wish WWE would do more of that, because you do have wrestlers that have that attitude. And I know they did it with Kevin Owens and Rhea Ripley, where they walked past and just gave each other a dirty look, which went nowhere so far with the Judgment Day. That actually might happen. You might have Judgment Day feuding with Kevin Owens. But man, getting back to this match, Sami Zayn, he did a Shinsuke Nakamura was on the top rope, and he like flung his leg, where Shinsuke literally, like, it wasn't like he braced himself, he just fell to the ground. It was like crazy. And then they went to commercial, which was insane. There was a point in the match where Sami Zayn did a Mikanoshu driver on the floor to Shinsuke Nakamura, which was like another insane spot. Then at some point in the match, Nakamura threw Sami Zayn into the turnbuckle really hard. Like, it was like, damn. But in the end, Nakamura kicked Sami, pinned him 1, 2, 3. Nakamura wins the match. There wasn't anything that happened afterwards or anything. It was just a really solid match. Like, this was a really cool match. It wasn't to the extent of, I believe they had matches in NXT. If you're watching this, comment below and let me know if they had matches in NXT. I can't remember. I know they were in NXT. Yeah, they were in NXT. They wrestled oh my God, was it the takeover in Texas at WrestleMania 32? Yeah, they did wrestle each other. Now it wasn't to that extent, but this was a pretty decent match. But comment below if I am correct in that information that Sami Zayn and Nakamura wrestled at an NXT takeover around WrestleMania 32. Yeah, I believe they wrestled there. Then we get a backstage video pack, or we get a video package of the Usos and their whole title reign, and it's basically all the title reigns that they had and the multiple time champs that they are. Then we get a wide shot of the crowd, and Happy Corbin's coming in to do happy talk. I'll say this now, and I'm probably going to say it again. I do not like when WWE gets a wide shot of the crowd. Not so much because it's a wide shot, because you want to get a wide shot, and this is me having a background in radio and TV broadcasting, doing camera work at concerts and everything. There's my degree right there. You want to get a shot of the crowd and just see like, oh, wow, there's a lot of people here. But when you get a wide shot and no one is doing absolutely nothing when they should be doing something, that's a problem for him because it just comes across like, okay, everyone's there, but like, are they bored? Are they like, what the hell's going on here? This segment, I mean, it is what it is. Happy Corbin, he used the line, maybe I'm the big bad wolf, and I huffed and I puffed and I put Moss in the hospital, and then he destroys Madcap Moss's Andre the Giant trophy. He destroys it. He walks with literally the top part of Andre the Giant, raises up. They cut to commercial. That segment, I would say that segment, and it's not a shot at Baron Corbin. I love Baron. I liked when he first came out and everything, but this isn't it. Like, I honestly think he needs to go back to that gritty, silent character that he was when he first debuted on SmackDown. For me, this is when the show just kind of went like just stagnant until the main event, because it just like, I think it's because like the crowd, and you're looking at the crowd and they're just sitting there, and like I always say in my reviews, like if you're watching as a viewer and you see the crowd not into it, what's this gonna make you feel like? All right, let me find something else to watch. But yeah, once this segment happened, it just like the pacing, the momentum, the energy of the whole show just kind of just like stagnated and just stayed. Like it was just very little moments where you saw like a large group of people having emotion, like they did with the Nakamura Sami Zayn match. Yeah, it was just really like, all right. Then we get a recap of Drew Gulak and his interaction with Gunther when Gunther smacked the shit out of him, and he just fell down in the backstage area. So we cut to, we go to the match between Drew Gulak and Gunther. Ludwig Kaiser introduces Gunther. Basically, this match was a freaking squash match. It was nothing but like Gunther chops. That's all it was. And then eventually he got a powerbomb on Gulak. 1, 2, 3. Gunther wins. Then afterwards he puts Gunther in like a Boston Crab. Ricochet comes out. He stops it. And then you have this stare down between Ricochet and Gunther. I don't know how I feel about it because it's weird because you don't get a feeling of what they're going to do with Gunther. You don't get an idea like, okay, we know they're going to want to push him as a force, but it just comes across very vague. Like, I want to get into him, but I hardly see him. And when he's in the ring, it's just mostly one-dimensional and not like the stuff that he was doing in NXT and NXT UK, which was some great matches that he had. I don't know, man. It was just really, I would put underwhelming. And again, this is not because of the wrestlers. I will say this constantly. It's not because of the wrestlers. It is the creative and the people in charge of the creative that's giving these wrestlers to do this. It just, not it. Then we get a backstage segment with Adam Pearce, and he's interrupted by Maxwell Dupree, formerly known as LA Knight, formerly known as Eli Drake. So he is in charge of, I believe it's the Maxim modeling, male modeling or something like that. And they're discussing it. And Adam Pearce is like, well, I don't know who signed you. And it's hard for me to get LA Knight out of my head. LA Knight / Maxwell Dupree's like, well, Sonya Deville is the one that signed the contract, and Adam Pearce is like, well, she's no longer here, and he's like, well, she brought me in, and Maxwell Dupree's like, yeah, I signed the contract, so we're gonna have some issues, and he's like, well, let me contact him. Yeah, Oh, man. Again, this is 3 segments. 3 segments. You have Happy Corbin. Then you have the Gulick match, which was just a squash match. And then you had this segment, which everyone, including myself online, like, I was just like, wait a minute, what? Maxwell Dupree? Like, what? And it wasn't so much that they changed his name. It's everything surrounding his name. Like, he's an agent for Maxim male modeling. Something like, what? Like, this guy's one of the best talkers and a great worker, and you have him like this? Like, what? Like, huh? Like, all right, it is what it is. And like I always say, WWE is going to be WWE. They're just going to do WWE doing WWE. They've been doing this for years. And they're probably going to do it next year, which is unfortunately. So yeah, we get that. Then we get a backstage segment of RK Bro. And they're hyping up their match. And I like the line after this segment where Pat McAfee says, RK Bro is insanely high on confidence. I thought that was hysterical. Man, Pat McAfee has been spot on commentary. He's one of my favorite color commentators in all of pro wrestling, man. He is very funny and quick-witted. It's like, oh, man, it's a joy listening to him. Then we get a recap of Raquel Gonzalez and her match with Ronda Rousey last week, which was a phenomenal match. Then we get a backstage segment with Shotzi, Aaliyah, and then Raquel comes in. Shotzi tells Raquel Rodriguez, you have all the tools, but don't know what to do with them. You're 6 feet of disappointment. Again, this is another wrestler, and by another wrestler, I mean Shotzi. A totally different presentation, feel, style, and just it's hard for me to just like to add anything else to it. It basically comes down to that because it's totally different from what made her such a fan favorite in NXT, that they've taken those characteristics and qualities away, and it's just honestly, it's just very bland. Like, it's like she has a lot of attitude. You could see it in her face, in her presentation. She has a lot of attitude. If you follow her on social media, she has a lot of attitude, and it's almost like we're getting a how do I put it? I would say kind of like a fast food express version. Like, you know how you have like McDonald's Express, like at mini oases in when you travel and stuff like that, you have those oases, and you know, usually have like a McDonald's Express, Taco Bell Express. Basically, we're getting an express version of Shotzi Blackheart. Not what we loved in NXT, is just an express version, and just really like just very bland. And then we go to the Raquel Rodriguez Shotzi match. I mean, it was, yeah, it's hard to describe this match. It was not bad, but it wasn't like, oh my god, this is great. It was a wrestling match. That's all I can say. That's how it came across to me on TV. That it was just another wrestling match. There was a shot where you had Natalya, the Los Lotharios, and Aaliyah, and I forgot who else, looking on, watching the match. There was a spot where Raquel Rodriguez did multiple back-to-back follow-away slams on Shotzi. Then there was an awesome corkscrew splash that Raquel Rodriguez did or performed on Shotzi Blackheart. Then, to finish the match off, there was a one-arm slam that Raquel Rodriguez did on Shotzi. 1, 2, 3. Raquel Rodriguez wins the match. It was basically what's the word I'm looking for? A prolonged squash match. There you go. That's what it basically was. Like, it really didn't showcase Shotzi's the matches that we've grown accustomed to her, especially the ones that she had with Ember Moon and just all the other matches that she had in NXT, where it's just like very generic and bland. And we know Shotzi can do a lot more than that. And it was just bland. Then we get a recap of Xavier Woods and the whole Butch, Ridge Holland, Sheamus storyline. We get a backstage segment with Xavier Woods, and he's talking crap to Butch. What I liked about this segment, he was talking to Kayla Braxton, and before he goes out to the ring, he's like, "Man, I miss talking smack with you." I was like, "Oh man, that's pretty dope." But yeah, this match, this was pretty fun. This was fun. You could tell the crowd was kind of like they were slowly getting into it. But again, the way WWE has presented Xavier Woods and Butch, formerly known as Pete Dunne, Sheamus, and Ridge Holland, and this whole storyline has been like, bleh. And it doesn't help that the storyline, once they started it, Big E got hurt from Ridge Holland, so it's just like, as a lot of people were just like, all right, it is what it is. They're gonna do this story. All right, we'll wait till they go on to the next. But no, this is a really cool match. There was a roll up by Woods on Butch for the win, which was crazy because he tried. The way Woods got the roll up was Butch went to swing at him, and Woods caught his arm and rolled him 1, 2, 3, and that was it. Like that's what I'm saying. Like it was a decent match, but it wasn't. Again, it was similar to Raquel Rodriguez and Shotzi, where it was just like a prolonged like it was like this match was, if you could say, a prolonged time filler in some instances. And it's not a shot at Xavier Woods or Butch, but it was just whatever WWE creative wanted them to put out there. That's what it came across. Maybe it wasn't their intention, but that's how it came across. Then afterwards, you had Butch. Xavier Woods, was leaving the ring, or before he left the ring, Butch left out, and Pat McAfee's like, "Oh, this guy's always throwing a temper tantrum." So Xavier Woods is walking to the back, and he's what used to be a stage, whatever that is. He's raising his hand, and you see Ridge Holland and Sheamus walk out. He turns around, and then out of nowhere, Butch attacks him, and then they walk off. Then we go to commercial. They come back. Xavier Woods, he's like, "You know what? I'm tired of this. Kofi's going to be back, and I know Big E's out, but I got someone in mind who's going to handle this, and we're going to settle this." So eventually we're going to get a 6-man tag match with Kofi, Xavier, and whoever they choose against Ridge Holland, Sheamus, and Butch. And then this is where things got very interesting on this show. So, mind you, all this has happened. While all this has happened, Michael Cole, and I am not going to say this was Michael Cole, because let's face it, there is a person in Michael Cole's ear, and he's a 76-year-old billionaire owner of this company, feeding lines. So basically, I'm giving you the abbreviated, condensed version of what he said. Basically states that on Monday, Sasha Banks and Naomi were supposed to have this match, and they pull up the match graphic of Naomi, Sasha Banks, and Asuka versus Doudrop, Nikki HS, and Becky Lynch. He proceeds to say that they walked in John Laurinaitis' office, they dropped the women's tag team titles on his desk and left, and therefore, because of their actions, they are suspended indefinitely, and there will be a tournament to determine the new champions. Very interesting. For one, the verbiage that they use and the tone that not so much Michael Cole, but you could kind of sense that it was the way Vince McMahon would want someone to send that message out. Very authoritarian. I know a lot of people have had this discussion like, well, they didn't do it to this person, they didn't do it to that person, they didn't do it to this person. I know a lot of people are saying it's a word. A lot of credible wrestling media have said this isn't a work. I don't know. It just doesn't. It's not entertaining. For one, with everything going on in the world and stuff like that, it's like there's a better way to handle it. And the way they did it, as far as the press release right away, it was just really weird. And let's face it, WWE has done some very oddball things in the last 2 years, whether it was releases or just like, huh? Again, I always say WWE is going to do WWE. But yeah, the tone, I don't want to say the term, but the verbiage, he kept on emphasizing they let all of us down. They let all of us down. We're disappointed they let all of us down. It's just like, it's very interesting. Very, very interesting verbiage to use. They let all of us down. I don't know. It's just very, just very interesting. And what doesn't make this any better is that they announced this. Michael Cole announced this, and Pat McAfee's like, oh, all right. And then we have the RK Bro versus the Usos tag match. And of course, Naomi is married to one of the Usos. I think Jimmy or Jay. I think it's Jimmy. Jay, I don't think it's... Yeah, Jimmy, I think it's Jimmy Uso that she's married to. So you announced this before their match. And that's, for me, is just like... And I tweeted this, I'm like... when they announced it was like, oh my God. And of course, everyone's live tweeting during WWE and stuff like that. And I know for me and many other people, it was like, why would you announce this before the tag match when you know a good percentage of the people aren't going to be focused on the match and probably not watch the match? They're going to be discussing what you just said. And of course, they did suspend Sasha Banks and Naomi indefinitely. And it was revealed that they took all their merchandise off WWE Shop, which they've never done to any person that has walked out or anything like that. They kept it up there. So very interesting. That's why, for me, watching wrestling for over 40 years, at least 40 years. No, not 40 years. 38 years. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's a work, or this is that. When you release statements and the verbiage that you use, and then announcing this, I mean, they could announce this Sasha Banks Naomi tournament right before. They could announce it right before the Raquel Gonzalez Shotzi match. They could announce it before that, which would have made more sense. They announce it, you have the match, and then you have Xavier Woods, or they could announce it right after the Raquel Rodriguez Shotzi match. But yeah, I didn't like it because it's right before the Usos RK Bro match. Like, what? Really? And for me, I'll be honest with you, it took me out of the match because it was just like, why would you announce that? Like, that was why would you announce that before? Like, what? And it was a pretty decent tag team match. Of course, the crowd was hot. But here's the thing. The crowd was hot there. But the people who were watching it, and of course, in the last 10 years, it's grown where people are on social media at the same time while watching Raw. People weren't necessarily watching it. I know maybe the ratings will differ if, the revealed, if the ratings dropped or anything during the match, but, it's just like, man, what are you doing? Like, we want to be into this match, and that's the other thing. Like, they were announcing that this match was going to happen at WrestleMania Backlash. They changed it, and now they have it, and it's like, all right. But I mean, there was a point in the match towards the end where Roman Reigns, Riddle was going to perform look like a Spanish fly or what have you, on Jey Uso. Roman stopped him. Riddle fell on the ground. Jey did a frog splash, or the splash. 1, 2, 3. The Usos are the Unified Tag Team Champions. Post-match, they just beat the hell out of everybody. Roman, Usos, they beat up Randy. They beat up Riddle. They put Riddle on the announce table, and Jey Uso did a frog splash from the top turnbuckle onto the announce table, and then Roman proceeded to put Randy Orton in a guillotine choke, choked him out, and they stood in the ring with the belts. So the Usos, Roman Reigns, have unified both the tag team titles and the World Heavyweight Championships. And so, yeah, that was SmackDown. I will say it was a complete 180 from the SmackDown we saw last week. That was fun. This was not fun. And whatever backstage, if you want to call it turmoil, uneasiness, questions, shock, frustration, whatever authoritarian, we're going to show them, make an example out of them. All those emotions were pretty evident how this show came across. It basically, for me, this show was very bland. The main event was good. The Shinsuke Sammy match was good, but everything else in between, it just lacked, like, what's the word I'm looking for, man? It just lacked intrigue and interest, and it's not the performer at all. It was just the creative and the person in charge of the creative. Like, it just really just came off flat, but I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, the announcement that Sasha Banks and Naomi are suspended indefinitely, there's more I want to talk about it, but it's for them to release a statement and for them to do this, and I know people were making the case, oh, well, they were announced. Usually I'm on social media. I'm always on social media. I'm a social media consultant. But I'm right before Raw. I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I'm hashtagging, hey, let's see what happens on Raw. They really didn't announce that match till like maybe 30 minutes to an hour before the show started. And it wasn't like hyped or anything. It was like, oh, okay. And that was it. So, and of course, when the show started, yeah, we're going to have this match. They do the matches and everything. But I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just really, it has the tone of we're going to make an example out of them. And it does have the tone, and I've seen it on social media, and I've seen it on posts that I've just relaying the message of this situation of a lot of people's responses are similar to the shut up and dribble. That's just how it is. The tone of the wording that they used in the letter, the statement that they released, and then what Michael Cole was given to say has a lot of shut up and dribble vibe to it. And I'll leave it at that. So that is my review for the May 20th episode of WWE Smackdown. Like, share, comment, subscribe, follow House of Wrestling on all social media platforms. Follow me, Dedrian180, on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Give this video a thumbs up on YouTube. And like I always say, well, stop fighting over wrestling. But if wrestling, man, it's hard to be a wrestling fan. I'm sorry, man. It's hard to be a wrestling fan when you have your favorite wrestlers and stuff like this happens. And it's just, I've seen it for the past 38 years with a lot of promotions. So all I'm going to say is WWE's doing WWE. They're making money. you have other options, watch all the other wrestling companies. There you go. I'll leave it at that. All right. So with that,